We do that. Recorded. All right. So by way of introduction, everybody, I think you know Laura and Carson Foushees. They are CBF field personnel serving in Tokyo. They'll tell you all about that. This is their daughter, Aydah. And you may remember that on this coming Sunday last year, they were guest preachers at Oxford Baptist. And we were supposed to be their last stop before they headed back to Tokyo. And then COVID-19 changed life for all of us. And as I've shared in email newsletters with the church, like most of our folks didn't know what Zoom was this time last year, and now we do. And so we get to talk to you over Zoom because of it. So let's we've certainly taken a good share of the bad. Let's enjoy some of the good with that. And we're excited to have you guys tonight. Thank you for doing this with us and for us. And I'm going to turn it over to you. You'll lead us in devotional of some kind. Tell us kind of what you're doing, and then we'll open up for question and answer. And when it wraps up, it wraps up. Sound good?
Sounds great.
All right.
Well, yeah, thanks so much for having us. And I'm glad that we are 14 hours ahead of you right now. So this is actually a really good time of year to do things like this, especially for your evenings, because it's a good time in the morning for us. And so it's Thursday morning here. And I'll start with a brief devotion. It's really a reflection over the last year for us, but for all of us, I think. And then Carson will kind of pick up and talk about what we've been doing since we've been back. We got back in mid-December. Today I'm going to read from Galatians Chapter 6, verses 9 through 10. And this is the New American Standard Bible. It says, "Let us not lose heart in doing good, for in due time we will reap if we do not grow weary. So then, while we have opportunity, let us do good to all people, and especially those who are of the household of faith." So Paul closes, this is at the end of his letter to the Galatians, and he's been advising them on issues surrounding who can and can't be a part of their community, specifically whether circumcision was required among Gentile believers. It was a difficult time for the church in Galatia. And so Paul's words provided them encouragement to continue the course of doing good, loving God and loving neighbor, even when the weariness or the temptation to give up sets in. I think it's safe to say that our churches and the global church, though facing altogether different challenges than the church in Galatia, is 1 year of being thrown into a pandemic and eventually a post-pandemic world. And I think the weariness may be starting to set in. We were actually, like Chris said, with you all this time last year. And while we were driving from Raleigh to Oxford that morning, we were texting with our supervisors who live in Malaysia about reassessing our return to Japan, which was scheduled for March 5th. So it's hard to believe it's been a full year since all of that was taking place and we were making those decisions. And we ended up spending 3/4 of that year in the US waiting to be able to get back to Tokyo and pick up where we left off. We were weary from all of that. We were walking alongside churches and friends in the US who were becoming weary of not being able to gather and constantly trying to find new ways of finding meaningful connection. And we were also trying to walk alongside our church here in Tokyo from afar, who was experiencing much of the same. And this has just been the story of the last year. But Christians have long been challenged to remember the difference between two Greek words for time, chronos and kairos. The Greek word chronos, meaning time, relates to our ways of measuring time and using time, the way we plan and make goals. Does not always align with the other Greek word for time, kairos. Kairos time, or as I often heard it explained growing up, God's time, holds a mysterious sense of rightness. That in kairos, what happens and when it happens comes together with a purpose, a meaning, or sometimes a perfection that we can only explain with words like providential. It seems that much of our weariness may surround the fact that Chronos time has not worked very well for us in 2020, and now beginning in 2021. The plans and the goals that we held this time last year, if not completely lost, have been changed quite significantly. I can tell you that the phrase "we've lost a whole year" has been muttered more than once in our house. Not surprising is the fact, though, that Paul uses kairos in verse 9 when he says, "In due time, we will reap." The New Revised Standard Version uses the word harvest to indicate the sense of God's timing, the right time when we will reap those good things if we don't grow weary and we keep doing good. So even in conflict or in troubling times, we can still have that opportunity to do good. The kairos is also used in verse 10 for the word opportunity as it's translated in English. So while we have the opportunity and while we have the time, let us do good. In God's timing that we are gifted, there's always an opportunity to do good, even if we've had to throw Chronos time out the window. So I have clung to the idea of kairos time over the last year. On days that I keenly felt goals slip away or that time was lost and I was just idly waiting, kairos helped me remember that God would get us back to Japan in God's due time. But it also reminded me that I could use the opportunity of the time at hand to still do good. I could still study Japanese in America. I could still support the Tokyo church here and a Japanese church that meets at First Baptist Church Raleigh by preaching in Japanese by video. Or we hosted a summer intern online. Or we were just able to be present with Aydah and be present with our family members in America. So in October, we were finally given a path to reapply for visas, and we set our return flights for December 10th. That would give us enough time to get our paperwork settled and in hand, and also would hopefully beat Christmas holiday travel. And just 3 days after finishing our 2-week quarantine here in our apartment, Japan closed its borders again because of concern of the new strains of the coronavirus, and the borders are still closed. That small window of opportunity that we had, I think, was kairos. There's so much that is challenging personally and for us as the church, but we live with the gift of kairos, whose rightness helps us have hope and persevere, and whose opportunity challenges us to continually faithfully serve those around us. Thanks be to God.
And so as Chris has asked, we also would like to share about what's been going on. It's been a year, so we'll forgive you if you don't remember every detail of our ministry. But very quick overview, we were commissioned as CBF field personnel back in 2013 in Greensboro. So we're both North Carolinians. Laura grew up in Raleigh at Ridge Road Baptist Church, which some of you may be familiar with in your area. And then I grew up in little Statesville, North Carolina, just east of Hickory, west of Winston-Salem. So down 40. So we met at McAfee School of Theology in Atlanta, and Laura had this calling to serve the local church. Little did she know that that would end up being internationally, because I also had a calling to serve cross-cultural ministries and had a passion for serving in international settings. And so we were blessed with an opportunity with CBF as field personnel to work alongside local churches in Japan. So it was this international local hybrid that we found that fit both of our callings. And so for 3 years, we were in cities of Kanazawa and Toyama. So if you ever look at a map of Japan, it kind of curves around and it looks like a little thumb sticking off of the map on the west side of the main island. We have lots of islands, but the main island of Honshu. And we were there for 3 years serving in lots of English roles, specifically with an international group of students and teachers and international people and Japanese people that wanted English Bible study and worship service, and would preach through translation in the Japanese church. Had a wonderful opportunity there, as well as in another city, like I said, close by in Toyama. and then felt like God wasn't done with us yet in Japan. So after our initial 3 years, worked alongside our partner, the Japan Baptist Convention, and said we'd like to stay here longer, and see what might be. And so we said our Japanese levels got to get better. So we had only been studying part-time a couple times a week with a private tutor, and we said we need to go and do the full-fledged Japanese language study. And so you might remember we preached last year at Oxford kind of about being learners, as what we had spent that last several years as learners. And so we were learners, we were students. Every single Monday through Friday, we were in Japanese language courses. And from there, we're blessed to graduate in the 2-year period, which is not an easy task. And then had little Aydah. Laura was riding 9 months pregnant on full-fledged Japanese trains, just like you see on the news, with packed to the gills, and was a trooper in that way. And then were led into a position that we now are still in, especially due to the effects of Corona, where we serve alongside a church called Tokiwadai Baptist Church. It's been around since Foreign Mission Board missionaries helped to plant it in the 50s. They are a great congregation that we're learning alongside. So essentially, we have entered into a practicum period where we are applying all the language that we've accumulated since 2013 in general life and language school, and then having to learn all the church language that I know you don't use at Oxford. There is no specific insider language. I know you all just use normal language with everybody, but all that biblical language, all the ancient language that we read, that we need to also be able to not only learn but be able to teach. And so that is our role now, is we are preaching fairly, at least once a month, and then also have been asked to lead some work with their kindergarten, which is their preschool, teaching some mothers and children along the way. And then due to Corona, we were preaching via internet, but also it extended our job description an extra year. We were hoping to start in 2 months, start a new job. And that just is impossible with the effects of Corona on our local churches here. And so our partner, the Japan Baptist Convention, said, "Can you push it another year? We can lay this path out." And so we agreed to that. And so for the next year, we're also going to be trying to tie in some ways that we've been doing so much of output as far as like our own preparation and teaching, that we haven't had as much of these kind of experiences where we sit with groups and we have opportunity for dialogue and questions. And so that is our goal over the next year, is to learning how to do presentations well, and to learn how to have, how to do Q&A, and how to feel the actual, listen to the desires and the questions of people, and learn how to manage that for long-term work.
Yeah, so sermons are challenging because it's a 20-25 minute rehearsed, manuscript in Japanese. So that has its own challenges, but it's actually more challenging for us to sit in a setting like this and hear someone share something from their heart and fully grasp the entire meaning. Our language is still coming along in that way. So what we've asked our church to do is to do less of the preaching now, and to do more of the dialogue type sessions. Hopefully I'll focus more on like spiritual formation with our congregation, and Carson will focus more on mission trainings, and also just hearing stories from church members about how they became Christian, because we don't always hear those stories organically in conversation. But it's really important for our work to also know, how is it that someone became connected to the church, how someone was first introduced to Christ.
Especially when they're a minority of the minority.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so
1%.
Yeah, 1% of the entire population, 120 million people, is Christian. And so you have to really want to be a Christian here. That is something that you have to feel absolute call to, because you are going to be considered an outsider in a lot of ways in your workplace, maybe especially in your family, if you don't have other Christians in your family. So those are important stories for us to dig into and learn more, so that we can then engage with other people who are unconnected to the church.
So yeah, so that's kind of our focus for the next year. And we've already been able to have really good kind of next step conversations with the Japan Baptist Convention since we've been back. We actually just did about a 45-minute presentation for one of their subcommittees of their mission department that's made up of pastors and church leaders to talk about who we are, who CBF is, and what our hopes for the future are in terms of work in Japan. And so one of the things that we've been sharing is a common thread that we have organically connected with internationals during our time here. And that is a way that we feel like we can be used alongside a church's ministry, especially because churches, if they're looking for a way, if a church is looking for a way to connect with its community, reaching out to internationals is a really good way for them to, as the majority population, as Japanese people, reach out to a minority population and help them not only with physical needs that they need in terms, whether it's language assistance or how to coats.
There are people from Southeast Asia that come
Yeah.
to the Northern Islands for factory and fishing work, and they don't have the right clothes for places like that.
Or whether it's emotional support. It is very, very difficult to break into Japanese society if you're not Japanese. And so one of the things, whether it was when we were in our first 3 years in Kanazawa and working with international populations there, or even in language school where we were all internationals learning together, we heard a lot of stories from our, especially our Asian classmates who just had a very different experience. Mm-hmm. In Japan, I think because they're Asian, as Americans, we have a very different, we're welcomed differently in a positive way. And a lot of our Asian classmates just talked about how they've worked so hard to build their Japanese skills and try to find a job, and they can't find a job, and they just want Japanese friends and they can't find friends. They don't have people that are willing to befriend them. And we've experienced that at some level.
It takes time to be friends with people like us that aren't fluent in the language, just like you might find in your own community. It's you want to be welcoming to people, but it's challenging that you have to slow down. You have to be more specific. You have to communicate differently. And so it comes more organically to us because we also are outsiders. And so we see that as a way that we can help to bridge the hospitality of the Japanese church and to welcome them into a spiritual community and a community that will support them in lots of different ways.
Yeah. So one of our prayer requests would be over this next year, we're kind of in a matchmaking process of where is a congregation that feels called to do this kind of ministry or something new where our model of being missionaries is a bit different than maybe what they've been historically used to. Missionaries come and teach English in your church. Missionaries come and plant churches, but we're asking to come alongside of them and to do the work with them, not for them. And so that is kind of a way that we're embarking on a kind of a new model of mission partnership.
Well, it's also hard for most of our churches in the Japan Baptist Convention. We're in the largest one. That's one of the reasons we chose this church whenever we were in language schools, because we knew that there were the resources that we wouldn't be called upon every single week to do work while we were trying to really study language well. And the pastor had been so welcoming to us. He was at our commissioning in North Carolina in 2013. But most of our churches are around 40 people or smaller. And so you're talking about these are already very, very busy churches as far as just keeping the work going and start, discipling within their own community and trying to reach out as best as they can outside of their community. And so if we have an opportunity to come alongside them and strengthen them as well, give them encouragement a lot of ways just by being a part of the community, then we see that as a blessing that we can both receive.
So yeah, we'll stop there. And so I don't know if there are any questions. It does not have to be about specifically what we talked about. If you just have questions about Japan, that's fine too. So
yeah, so everybody, I muted you, but if you need help being unmuted, let me know. And I wonder what do we want to discuss with Carson and Laura tonight? Unmute yourself and ask, or holler at me or somehow, like what comes to mind. Otherwise, I'll just ask questions because I got a handful of them. All right. So warm up question, maybe. What does Aydah do during the day?
That's a
Did you
great
hear your
question.
name?
Yeah. So what's her life like right now? And then I have a follow up, maybe a little bit in a bit.
She's watching Sesame
Yeah.
Street. Sorry, Chris, you're very interesting, but yeah.
Yeah, so really since the pandemic started, we didn't know how long we were going to be in America. So for 6 months we lived with my parents in Raleigh, and then we moved in September to an apartment owned by First Baptist Greensboro. And so that was kind of a good transition for us. That first 6 months we had my parents who both were, not working, to help with Aydah, so we could do things, study and work. And then we moved to Greensboro, and we were kind of on our own again. But it was a good transition for us to figure out, okay, how are we going to do work from home and childcare? So our general schedule, we break up the morning. We have like an 8 to 10 block and a 10 to 12 block. So one of us gets the 8 to 10 block to work. The other one gets, another one watches Aydah, and then we switch. And so usually the 8 to 10 block for Aydah is we do a letter of the day. We're practicing our alphabet. We just do kind of free play in the apartment. And then 10 to 12, as long as the weather's good, which it usually is, she gets to go next door to, there's a big park right next to our apartment. And so she gets to go, she plays on the playground. She loves to pick up rocks and sticks and put them in her bucket, see the ducks on the lake. So we get to do that. It's also been a good way for us to slowly begin to get to know people and other families in our neighborhood, which, is still hard with COVID stuff, you don't,
barrier.
Yeah, language barrier, but that's the morning, and then we come and have lunch. She does nap time early afternoon, and then late afternoon is usually going out for another walk and some playtime. And then
our apartment's
700 square feet.
700 square feet, and so getting outside is kind of important.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that's kind of a general day. She gets to FaceTime with grandparents.
Yeah, she's almost 2. I don't know if we ever said that. She turns 2 next month. So,
yeah.
And so how long will it be till she starts in some sort of school, preschool, daycare program?
Until mom and dad feel comfortable with
COVID.
Okay.
Yeah, we're still assessing that, because we don't, our schedule is one that she doesn't need to be full-time nursery school, and she's still too young to do the traditional kindergarten. Kindergarten starts at 3. So trying to find something that's just part-time care would be ideal, while also kind of watching and making sure it's safe to do so.
The interesting thing though is there's actually, so Japan is in a population decline, and so the number of schools is declining as well. So as the birth rate has declined, the number of schools is unnecessary. And so I know we hear the stories of how competitive things are in America for preschools. It's very similar here. Mm-hmm. And so getting into, especially ones that have public assistance, which there are quite a few, very competitive. And so to be able to have that option is something that we're trying to gauge. And we're right at the time of year. Japan is on an April to March business year, school year. And so we're kind of right at the change. So
we're kind of still, that would be another prayer request, kind of still assessing what that looks like for our family. At the minimum, I think once things become a little safer, there are a lot of neighborhood play groups that we can go to. Our church's kindergarten, though it's a little far from our house, they do like twice a week. They have kind of a mother. It's pretty much moms. It's mother and children playtime together. So one of the things that we may do at the least is like that just becomes a part of my ministry, is taking Aydah to play groups to build relationships with families, either in our church's kindergarten or here in our neighborhood. And so I think that's where that would shift. And then, the other thing we have to think about is her language. So she hasn't really heard a lot of Japanese until
over half her life in America waiting to come back.
So probably a more gradual approach to getting her used to play in Japanese and things like that would probably be better than just starting full-time nursery school and dropping her off. So I think we're probably going to have more of like a graduated approach to that. So yeah, so hopefully, as our cases have been declining significantly since the winter, and so we're hoping that all is going to be safe to be able to do things like that. So.
Yeah, I think we never saw one of our factors in not returning as well last year was also Aydah had a cleft palate. And so that was a significant factor in deciding where was it going to be safe to do a surgery. We felt safe. We felt good with the Japanese healthcare system. That wasn't the issue. It was the timing. She was going to spend a week in a recovery room with like 4 other children during a pandemic, and we just felt like we could look into something different. And Wake Forest Baptist Health took us on and got things scheduled for us, and so that was a major deciding factor in staying in America as well. But that was so language development's a big deal for us because we also are connected with a group of doctors here as far as speech therapy and kind of the whole development of the head that comes with that surgery. And so that's a factor in our lives as well here. So prayer requests for Aydah.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, I have a follow-up unless someone else wants to hop in and ask something.
Sorry, it's becoming juice time. Excuse me.
Yeah, of course, no problem. Like, I mean, this is like, well, so y'all, there was a show on MTV a few years ago called Cribs, where like an actor or some celebrity would like walk you through the house, and like, so Carson and I in our emails with each other have been joking about, Cribs, and Carson was going to walk us around all 700 square feet of the apartment.
Yeah, that's right.
We've seen, some of folks may have seen like stories on 60 Minutes of how Japanese kids, when they're like 5 and 6 and 7 years old, travel like 45 minutes by themselves to school across Tokyo subways, and like culturally everybody's looking out for these kids and caring for them.
That's,
and so I just wondered if as you imagine yourself 3 and 4 years down the road, is that what you picture for Aydah? Like, will that kind of be part of her typical development?
It's possible. A lot of that, I think, honestly, it depends on the, so testing into schools is a big deal here. And so that would be the reason some kids are traveling. It's not because they don't have a school in their neighborhood or in their town. Often it's because they're testing into better schools. And so, but yeah, I mean, we see elementary school kids playing by themselves every single day. It's a very unique thing in our society.
A lot of retirees are the crossing guards. So they come out, in the mornings and the afternoons, the kids are walking to and from school and helping them cross the road. And it really is a community thing. I think for us as Americans, we of course have like child protection has been so reinforced in our minds. I think it's a hard balance because I think that we want to, we know that there are a lot of children, that most children remain very safe here. But we don't want to be naive either. And so I think that it is a hard balance. But I think if we stayed in a metropolitan area, and that's one of the things over the next year, we're going to be deciding where we're going to live. And we don't know yet where that's going to be. It could be a smaller city. It could be still here in Tokyo. And so I think that especially for in a metropolitan area, there's a possibility that Aydah could be, making all the, doing the commute herself, which is hard to
every day we got on the trains to go to language school, there would be little kids around, or especially junior high school students were certainly on the trains heading to some other part of the city for school. It's remarkable.
Yeah. Cool. All right, y'all, anybody got something they want to ask or point out or highlight, or Oxford folks? Amy, you looking for your mute button?
I got it.
Yeah.
I was just curious. I know you said that Christianity was so rare there. I was curious what the demographics of your church look like. Is it varied, or is it mainly older, younger, men, women? What does that look like?
Yeah. I would say it is graying, but our church, especially because it has a kindergarten or preschool, does have quite a bit of, there's a presence of young families that are there, and they do a lot of, even on Sunday mornings, they do like a church school for kindergarten children who may not, they may be the only ones in their families that are coming, but because it's a program, their, parents will bring them. And I would say probably the average age is in the 50s. One of the differences in our church here in Tokyo from the first churches that we served, aside from the size itself, is the percentage of men. We have far more men in our church here in Tokyo than we did in these smaller cities. At our first church, well, I guess in both churches that we served in the first 3 years, almost all of the deacons were women because most of the church was women. And so this is the first time we've really experienced a church that has a good gender balance. And I don't know if part of that is being in a city that's less traditional, because the first area we were in was, everyone told us like, oh, you're in one of the most traditional, especially like Buddhist traditional places in Japan. So I feel like that we have, a good gender balance and good representation in church leadership in that sense. But yeah, I think in 20 years, if the church doesn't have more, young families come in and younger people come into leadership, they could be, kind of pressed for the people that they need to kind of keep their current programs and ministries going. So it is growing.
Cool.
Do you have anything to add?
Who else got a question? Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say, yeah, we're the JBC, the Japan Baptist Convention, is really good partners with CBF because of their support of men and women in ministry, and so we're grateful for that. And so we've been to at least one church that's had female pastor, but that's another unique thing, especially in Asia. It's a very traditional culture here and across the continent. And so the Japan Baptist Convention would be very like-minded to what we find in our CBF life.
Other folks got something they want to ask? Check in on?
The food is really good.
Yeah, I was going to ask about the food and the coffee. Are you drinking coffee? And
Laura drinks Starbucks probably.
I do, yeah. We have Costco here. We're actually going tomorrow, so we actually have quite a bit of we have access to a lot of the things we would get at home. Unfortunately, just because of COVID, we're not eating in restaurants, and so ramen shops are pretty much eat in only, and so that's an unfortunate consequence of the pandemic. We haven't been into a ramen shop. We're also not, as much as we love sushi, takeout sushi doesn't sound as appealing as sitting in a restaurant and knowing that I've just seen the fish cut. So we're going to wait until that happens. But there are lots of, and then you learn what's real Japanese food and what's not Japanese food from our American life. And so the grill where they cook in front of you, not Japanese food. But the sushi and the ramen, definitely Japanese food.
Kanki is still great, even if it's not authentic. But
I got no problem.
Oh yeah,
that's the Japanese food I grew up on. Same thing with Chinese food. When I got there and I served as a go student in China, it wasn't the same that I found at the local takeout place in Statesville.
We're eating sesame chicken.
Yeah, sesame chicken was not a thing. But no, we really appreciate all the different. Japan pretty much eats anything from the sea, and so we've learned to like some things and learn to taste others. So
that's great. Oxford folks, you got any more questions or feedback or words of encouragement or anything like that? Well, I'm gonna impose. I want to ask two things. One, for a benediction, would it be possible? This is putting you on the spot to read the Galatians passage in Japanese for us.
Ooh, I can try.
Okay, and
it's going to be
that we won't know the difference. None of us speak Japanese, so that'd be that you can prep for that. You mentioned prayer requests, and you mentioned
Yeah.
finding a church in your call, and kind of where that call is next. And you mentioned, just raising Aydah here in a, as a third culture kid, and helping her get what she needs health developmentally, but also like how, so we can pray for those two things. But as you're thinking, what other, is there anything else on your prayer request list that we can know about?
Yeah, I think that our major one is just about that this year is it becomes very clear about what we're supposed to be doing. We talked about the business year is April to March, and so the hope is that the convention and our partnership together will have a decision by November, when they have their annual meeting of all the churches, and so that by November, and especially by next spring, that'll be clear where and what we're going to be doing, probably for the next several years.
Yeah, good, very good. Well, we have a prayer list at church, and a lot more people get it during non-COVID times, but we have your name and where you're stationed, and stationed, if that's, I don't know, you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And so we will keep those things in our prayers for you, and you all just remember us and pray for us, and know that we're thankful for you and excited for what you're doing, and thankful for the ways that, like, Acts 1:8 says, "You'll be my witnesses to the ends of the earth." And so the 9 of us that are on this call from Oxford, like, our end of the earth is Oxford sometimes, but we're thankful that your edge of the earth is on the other side of ours. And so thanks for being with us in spirit and connecting in that way. So.
Yeah. And we wanted to say thank you again. I know we weren't there in person, but we're so glad to be in an Encourager Church relationship with you all. So we look forward to the ways that we can deepen our relationship with you all in the days ahead. Us too.
Yeah, thanks for participating in that service. That was a really fun Sunday. As fun as video church can be, that was one of my favorite ones. So thank you all.
That's right.
Yeah.
All right. Well, you Laura, close us with Galatians 6, 9, and 10.
All right. I do want to show you. We read vertically in traditional Japanese, so that's part of the reason why it's difficult to get a good fluid thing, because I'm having to
jump up to
read up and down. So, but here we go. 絶えまず背の行いましょう。飽きずに励んでいれば、時が来て身を刈り取ることになります。ですから、今、時のある間に、すべての人に対して、特に信仰によって家族になった人々に対して善を行いましょ
う。That's beautiful. Thank you. Well, you all, we are thankful for you. God bless you. And I'll close us with an English prayer, and then, just thanks for everything. This has been great. So everybody, let's pray together. Loving God, we're thankful for Oxford Baptist Church, for Cooperative Baptist churches, for Japanese Baptist churches, and for the partnership that brings us in this place we love called Oxford, and brings us together with Carson and Laura and Aydah on the other side of the world, with a place that you've called them. We pray that just as we ask prayers for ourselves and for our friends and family, that you would hear our prayers for them. May they find discernment in their work, and may they, as they are serving you and being a family and raising a family and following you well, may they sense clarity in that call, and may they find welcoming folks to help them offer their gifts to Japan and to your kingdom. Be with us as we go from this time and place. May your spirit be with us, and may we sense a call to serve you well in the place where you've placed us. These, O Lord, are our prayers, and we offer them in your name. Amen.
Amen.
All right. Thanks, everybody. It's so good to be with you. And
before we get off, can we take a screenshot
Yes.
of our group. Is that okay?
Yeah, please do. I should have done
Okay.
it.
That's okay.
All right,
All right, everyone smile. Perfect. Thank
we
you.
have social media we like to share about the
If that's
ways that
okay.
we've
Yeah.
connected, if you're okay with that.
Yeah, please do. That'd be all right. You can tag us on Facebook or whatever, right?
That's right.
Thank you, guys. We really enjoyed it. Also,
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, y'all can unmute yourselves and say goodbye or whatever you'd like.
Goodbye. We enjoyed it, and we'll be praying for you.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you for all you do.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Mhm.
you.
Yeah.
Enjoyed it.